Sherlock Holmes and the Wager of Death, an Honoring Audiobook's original story, from the reminiscences of John H. Watson, M.D. Act 1. The fog over the Thames was a thick, tangible curtain, muffling the sounds of London and cloaking the city in a spectral silence. I found myself once again standing beside Sherlock Holmes on the embankment, our eyes fixed upon the silhouette of the Seraphine. The great steam-powered vessel loomed like a grand floating palace, its dark hull outlined faintly against the mist, and the soft glow of gas lamps winking like distant stars along its decks. Holmes's gaze was sharp, his fingers tapping rhythmically against the rail as though he measured the heartbeat of the steamer itself. "Do you feel it, Watson?" he said quietly. "That undercurrent of something unseen, something whispered in shadow." I frowned, the chill pressing through my coat. "You mean beyond the fog and the river? The scent of danger, no doubt." "More than that," Holmes replied, eyes narrowing. "Lord Percival Hargrave is dead, found in his private suite aboard this ship, the apparent victim of a locked-room mystery. No sign of forced entry, no struggle, and yet a single playing card was placed on his chest, the ace of spades, marked by a crimson fingerprint." I whistled softly. "A calling card of death. It has all the makings of a tale one might find in the pages of Poe." Holmes smiled faintly, though his eyes remained steel. "And yet this is no fiction, my dear Watson. It is a puzzle crafted in the highest echelons of society and politics." The mist shifted, revealing a glimpse of the ornate cabin windows, their heavy curtains drawn tightly as if to hide the secrets within. "I am curious," I said, "as to what manner of man Lord Hargrave was. Surely a government official of his rank had enemies enough." Holmes turned his piercing gaze toward me. "Indeed, a man involved in covert negotiations, whose death could unsettle the fragile balance of European powers. But it is not merely the man we must understand. It is the ship, the guests aboard, and the intricate web they weave." He paused, tapping his chin thoughtfully. "Come, Watson, we must not waste this hour. The fog waits for no man." We boarded the Seraphine with the measured grace of those accustomed to the presence of wealth and danger. The grand salon welcomed us with its warm yet perfumed air, an intoxicating blend of cigar smoke, fine whiskey, and whispered secrets. The polished wood gleamed beneath the glow of gas chandeliers, casting long shadows that danced upon the faces of gamblers and dignitaries alike. Holmes's eyes swept the room. "Observe the scene, Watson. The nobleman and the spy, the card shark and the illusionist, all tangled in a game where truth and deception are but two sides of the same coin." A man seated nearby caught my attention, a striking figure with the easy confidence of one accustomed to winning. His dark eyes gleamed as he casually shuffled a deck of cards, the faintest smirk playing on his lips. "Lucian Gray," Holmes murmured, "a gambler who never seems to lose, and who undoubtedly holds more knowledge than he cares to reveal." I followed Holmes's gaze toward a woman seated by the window, her profile pale against the night. She wore the air of mystery like a cloak, and her dark eyes held something unwritable. "La Vierge Noire," Holmes whispered, "known to some as the Black Virgin," a name whispered in the same breath as espionage and seduction. A sudden movement caught our attention, the entrance of Captain Fenwick, a man whose stern expression bespoke years on the sea. He approached us without ceremony. "Gentlemen," he said, voice low and steady, "this tragedy has left the Seraphine in disarray. Lord Hargrave was discovered in his cabin just before midnight. The door was locked from the inside, and no one entered or left. The crew is at a loss." Holmes raised an eyebrow. "And the card? The ace of spades with the red fingerprint?" Fenwick's jaw tightened. "A message. One of those aboard left it deliberately. Who and why, we do not yet know." Holmes's gaze pierced the dimly lit room. "Then our task is to find the hand that dealt this deadly card." I noticed the flicker of a smile on Holmes's lips as he glanced once more at the players gathered, each a potential suspect, each hiding their own secrets behind a mask of civility. "Come, Watson," he said. "The game is afoot, and on this steamer, every card turned reveals another layer of mystery." The Grand Salon's murmur hushed briefly as Madame Leclerc approached us. She moved with the grace of a queen presiding over her court, every gesture measured, every smile carefully composed. Her sapphire gown shimmered faintly in the gaslight, and the sharp intelligence in her eyes suggested she was as much a player in this deadly game as any gambler at the tables. "Detective Holmes, Dr. Watson," she greeted smoothly. "I trust your voyage aboard the Seraphine has been illuminating?" Holmes inclined his head politely. "Madame Leclerc, your establishment is quite remarkable, though I regret it is under such grim circumstances that we meet." She sighed, a faint trace of wariness crossing her otherwise composed features. Lord Hargrave was a difficult man, ambitious, secretive, and surrounded by enemies. I fear his death will only deepen the currents of danger that ripple through this vessel. Holmes fixed her with his unwavering gaze. "And you, madam, how do you fit into this picture? The owner of the Seraphine must have a keen understanding of the passions and rivalries playing out beneath your roof." Leclerc smiled, but it was a smile that never quite reached her eyes. "I am but a custodian of opportunity, Monsieur Holmes, a woman who provides a stage where men gamble not just with money, but with power, and sometimes with life itself." I watched as Holmes leaned closer, voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. "Were you acquainted with Lord Hargrave's activities? Perhaps aware of those who might wish him harm?" Her eyes flickered, ever so briefly, toward the shadows where the illusionist performed his sleight of hand to a rapt audience. "Hargrave's dealings were the kind one whispers about in back rooms and private clubs. Many aboard the Seraphine are not as innocent as they appear." Holmes nodded slowly. "A floating microcosm of politics and deceit. And among them, the elusive La Vierge Noire, rumored to be more than a mere passenger." Madame Leclerc's expression hardened. "She is as much a mystery to me as she is to you, I assure you. But she commands attention and caution." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Captain Fenwick, his expression grim. "Detective Dr. Watson, a word if you please." We followed the captain to a quiet corner, away from prying ears. He glanced around before speaking in a lowered voice. "The crew is uneasy. Whispers of sabotage and hidden allegiances abound. The documents Lord Hargrave carried, sensitive papers relating to secret negotiations, are missing." Holmes's eyes gleamed with interest. "A political motive, then? This murder is no mere crime of passion." "Indeed," Fenwick replied, "and with no one able to leave or enter, the killer must be among us." Holmes stroked his chin thoughtfully. "A perfect closed circle, a classic locked room. But I wonder, Captain, are we certain no one could have left unnoticed? Perhaps a hidden passage, a secret compartment?" Fenwick shook his head. "None that I know. The ship is old, yes, but well charted." Holmes's gaze drifted toward the casino tables, where Lucian Gray smiled his enigmatic smile. "Yet in such places, secrets abound in the shadows, Watson. Let us not discount the cunning of a practiced gambler." I watched as Holmes's mind raced, weaving threads of suspicion and insight. "Tell me, Holmes," I ventured, "what do you make of the playing card itself? The ace of spades, marked with a red fingerprint. What message does it carry?" Holmes placed the card carefully between his fingers, studying it as if it were a living thing. "The ace of spades has long been called the death card, a symbol laden with foreboding. But this mark, it could be a signature, a taunt, or a deliberate misdirection. Someone wants us to follow this clue, or perhaps be led astray." Our conversation was cut short by the approach of Eliza Hargrave, the victim's estranged daughter. Her eyes, sharp and unyielding, met Holmes's gaze without hesitation. "I assure you, I had no hand in my father's death," she said, voice steady yet edged with pain. "But many aboard the Seraphine had reason to want him silenced." Holmes regarded her carefully. "You speak with conviction, Miss Hargrave, and yet you stand to inherit a considerable fortune." She shot me a glare that bespoke more than mere suspicion. "Money means little to me, Dr. Watson. What I seek is justice." Holmes nodded, turning back to me. "A tangled web, Watson. Greed, power, and hidden agendas weave tightly around this vessel. As the night deepened, I found myself drawn into the mystery, not only by the puzzle itself, but by the weight of human passions laid bare in the fog-bound corridors of the Seraphine. The Seraphine's opulent drawing room was heavy with the scent of cigar smoke and expensive perfume. The gas lamps cast a warm glow over the richly upholstered chairs, yet the atmosphere was tense, as though the very walls bore witness to whispered betrayals. Holmes and I had gathered the principal suspects, each seated with a careful air of composure, yet the subtle flickers of unease were visible to a trained eye. Holmes began with Madame Leclerc. She sat with impeccable poise, hands folded in her lap, her gaze steady and unflinching. "Madame Leclerc," Holmes began smoothly, "you run this establishment with exceptional skill. But tell me, what was your relationship with Lord Hargrave? Were you acquainted with the sensitive negotiations he carried aboard?" Leclerc's eyes sharpened. "Lord Hargrave was a man of ambition, as you know. We crossed paths often, occasionally business, occasionally necessity. He believed the steamer offered a suitable haven for discreet discussions." Holmes leaned forward. "Did you know of any threats against him? Enemies who might seek to disrupt these negotiations?" Her voice lowered, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through. "Enemies abound in our circles, Monsieur Holmes, but to kill, that is a more perilous game." Holmes's gaze did not waver. "And yet, a murder has occurred on your watch. Tell me, madame, did you notice any unusual behavior among your guests that evening?" She hesitated, then said quietly, "There was tension, yes. Lucian Gray's gambling grew erratic, and the illusionist's act was strangely unsettling. His tricks seemed more than mere entertainment." Holmes turned then to Lucian Gray, who lounged with casual arrogance, fingers idly shuffling a deck of cards. "Mr. Gray," Holmes said with a sharp smile, "your reputation precedes you. A gambler who never loses, or so the story goes. Yet I find your expression less one of amusement and more of calculation." Gray's dark eyes gleamed. "Luck is a matter of perception, Mr. Holmes, and calculation, well, that is the gambler's true currency." Holmes studied him carefully. "You were in the company of Lord Hargrave shortly before his death?" Gray gave a faint shrug. "We spoke, yes. He was nervous, distracted. The documents he carried weighed heavily on him. Were you aware of their contents?" Holmes pressed. Gray's smile turned thin. "Only that they concerned matters best kept secret. I am but a gambler, not a politician." Holmes's voice took on an edge. "And yet you possess a knowledge that could tip the scales of power." The room fell silent as Gray's smirk faltered for a fraction of a second, a crack in his carefully constructed mask. Next, Holmes faced Eliza Hargrave, the victim's daughter. Her eyes burned with a fierce light, her posture rigid but proud. "Miss Hargrave," Holmes began gently, "your relationship with your father was strained, yet you returned to the Seraphine. What brings you here now?" Eliza's voice was steady, but there was a tremor beneath. "I came to confront him, to seek answers. Father's dealings were dangerous, and I feared for us all." "Did you confront him about the documents he carried?" Holmes asked. She nodded. "I warned him the negotiations might bring ruin. Did you threaten him?" Eliza's gaze hardened. "I wished only to save him, from himself and from those who would use him." Holmes's eyes searched hers. "You had means and motive, Miss Hargrave. But were you the hand that dealt death?" Her voice was firm, almost defiant. "No, that burden I do not bear." The final figure Holmes addressed was the illusionist, masked, enigmatic, a shadow in the corner of the room. His voice was smooth, almost theatrical. "Your acts are famed for vanishing and deception. Yet tonight, a man has vanished forever. What say you, sir?" The illusionist's eyes gleamed behind the mask. "Illusions are but tricks of the eye, detective. Death is no illusion. I play with misdirection, yes, but I do not kill." Holmes smiled thinly. "And yet your performance coincides eerily with the time of death. Were you acquainted with Lord Hargrave?" "Merely an observer of men's follies," the illusionist replied cryptically. "But every man harbors secrets, Mr. Violet Holmes, some more dangerous than others." As the interrogations deepened, Holmes's mind worked tirelessly, piecing together the mosaic of lies and half-truths. "Each reveals a fragment, Watson," he said quietly, "yet none offer the whole picture. The key lies in the interplay, the subtle shifts of trust and suspicion among these players." I glanced at the assembled group, the elegant, the cunning, the defiant, and the masked. Each bore secrets beneath their polished veneers. Holmes turned back to me, his voice low but resolute. "We stand at the edge of a labyrinth, Watson, and the shadows grow longer with every passing moment." Holmes paced slowly by the flickering fireplace, eyes sharp and restless. The suspects sat rigidly, each acutely aware of the scrutiny upon them. The warmth of the fire did little to soften the chill in the room. "Gentlemen, ladies," Holmes began, his voice steady yet incisive, "I have listened carefully to each of you. Your stories are plausible, at first glance, yet I find troubling discrepancies that demand explanation." He turned to Lucian Gray first, fixing him with a stare that pierced like a blade. "Mr. Gray, you claim ignorance of Lord Hargrave's documents, yet you admitted knowing of their existence and importance. Pray tell, how does a gambler, ostensibly uninvolved in politics, come to possess such knowledge?" Gray's smile tightened into something colder. "Information flows freely in these circles, Mr. Holmes. Discretion, however, is another matter." Holmes raised a finger. "Precisely. And yet you appear far too well informed, more than mere whispers among gamblers." Gray's eyes flicked to the door as if measuring his escape routes. "I am a man of many acquaintances, Detective. I keep my ears open," Holmes nodded slowly. "Indeed. And yet, when questioned about your whereabouts at the time of Lord Hargrave's death, your account wavered." Gray bristled. "I was in the card room, playing." "Alone or with company?" Holmes pressed. Gray hesitated. "I was. Alone." "Curious," Holmes said softly. "Several witnesses recall seeing you near the victim's suite shortly before the body was found. Would you care to explain?" Gray's composure flickered. "I may have passed by, but I did not enter." Holmes's gaze sharpened. "We shall see." Turning, Holmes addressed Eliza Hargrave with a quiet intensity. "Miss Hargrave, you claim to seek justice and not inheritance, yet you have repeatedly contradicted your father's associates on the timeline of his movements that evening." Eliza's eyes flashed with indignation. "I have said only what I know." Holmes's tone was gentle but firm. "Then let me clarify. You stated you confronted your father late in the evening. Yet Madame Leclerc tells a different story, that you left your father's company well before the hour of death." Eliza swallowed hard. "There may have been confusion. The hours blend in my mind." Holmes stepped closer. "Or perhaps an attempt to mislead." She drew herself up, voice icy. "I do not lie." Holmes's eyes searched hers, reading the storm beneath. "No one here speaks only the truth, Miss Hargrave, but your passion may yet prove your undoing." Madame Leclerc's calm exterior cracked slightly under Holmes's scrutiny. "You claim to run this ship as a sanctuary," Holmes said quietly, "yet you admit to knowing of tensions and threats against Lord Hargrave. Did you warn him?" Leclerc's gaze dropped. "I feared to involve myself." "Fear or calculation?" Holmes asked. Leclerc met his gaze squarely. "Perhaps both." Holmes gave a slow nod. "You would not be the first to weigh the scales of loyalty against self-preservation." Finally, Holmes's gaze fixed on the illusionist, whose masked face betrayed nothing. "You play with deception for sport," Holmes began. "Yet your acts involve vanishing and appearing, sleight of hand and misdirection. Is it not plausible that you used such skills for darker purposes?" The illusionist's voice was low, silky. "I assure you, detective, my art is only illusion. Reality is beyond my control." "Yet illusions can be deadly," Holmes countered. "Your act coincides precisely with the time of Lord Hargrave's murder. A convenient coincidence, would you not say?" The illusionist inclined his head slightly. "Coincidences are the magician's greatest allies. But I assure you, I am no murderer." Holmes turned to the assembled group once more, voice steely. "The truth lies hidden beneath layers of deception. Your stories conflict because each conceals a piece of the puzzle, whether out of fear, guilt, or ambition." He looked toward me, voice dropping slightly. "Watson, the game is more intricate than it first appeared. Our next step must be to pry deeper into these contradictions, to force the truth into the light." The night outside our cabin was thick with fog, the Thames a silent ribbon of shadow beneath the moon's cold glow. Inside, the gaslight flickered softly, casting long shadows across the room where Holmes sat poring over notes and sketches. I remained by the window, fingers tightening around my cup of tea. The events aboard the Seraphine weighed heavily on my mind, but it was not the murder alone that troubled me. It was the tangled web of my own heart. Eliza Hargrave. Her sharp eyes, her fierce determination, the fire in her voice when she spoke of justice. It had stirred something unexpected within me. I had seen in her not merely a suspect, but a woman wounded by loss, seeking truth in a world stacked against her. Holmes's voice broke my reverie. "Watson, you seem distracted. Pray, do not let personal feelings cloud your judgment." I turned toward him, forcing a smile that felt brittle. "You are correct, Holmes, but it is difficult to separate the man from the man's kin, especially when the kin is so vulnerable, so resolute." Holmes regarded me keenly. "Compassion is not weakness, my friend, but beware the perils of entanglement. Emotion is a fickle ally in the pursuit of truth. I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of his words. It is not merely compassion. I fear it clouds my clarity. I find myself wanting to believe her innocence despite the facts. Holmes's eyes softened slightly. It is a dangerous path you tread, Watson. A man's heart can be as labyrinthine as any mystery we seek to unravel. I sank into the chair opposite him. I wonder, Holmes, if I am losing my edge. The fog outside mirrors the fog within. He leaned forward, fingers steepled. Tell me, Watson, what do you fear most? Not for the case, but for yourself. The room grew still, save for the ticking of the clock. I hesitated, then spoke quietly. I fear that my judgment is compromised, that my desire to protect her may blind me to the truth, however bitter it may be. Holmes nodded gravely. A noble fear, but one that must be confronted. The truth must be our lodestar, even when it pains us. I met his gaze, resolve stirring beneath my doubts. Then I must steel myself, for justice and for her. Holmes smiled faintly, a rare gesture of camaraderie. Well said, Watson. Come, the night is young and our work far from done. As I followed him from the cabin, I cast one last glance toward the window. Beyond the glass, the river flowed dark and endless, a mirror to the uncertain course of my own heart. Holmes sat back in his chair, fingers lightly tapping the leather-bound dossier before him. The flickering gaslight cast restless shadows that danced across the walls, mirroring the unrest in the room. Watson, Holmes began without looking up, your concern for Miss Hargrave is evident, and though I caution you, it may serve us well. Emotional investment can sharpen observation, provided it does not cloud reason. I settled into the opposite chair, nodding. I hope I can strike that balance. But Holmes, what of the contradictions we uncovered? Where do you intend to focus next? Holmes's eyes gleamed with that unmistakable spark, the thrill of the chase. The inconsistencies point to a subtle but deliberate orchestration. Our culprit is skilled not only in deception, but in manipulating appearances, much like the illusionist. He tapped the dossier again. We must revisit the timeline meticulously. I intend to observe the interactions among our suspects, particularly in the moments preceding and following Lord Hargrave's demise. I hesitated, then asked, and the documents? The papers Lord Hargrave carried. Any thought on their fate? Holmes's expression darkened. The missing documents are a key. Whoever possesses them holds leverage that could alter the balance of power in Europe. I suspect an exchange was planned aboard the Seraphine. He rose suddenly, pacing the room with measured steps. Our next move is to shadow the movements of Madame Leclerc and Lucien Gray closely. Both have access, influence, and motive. I rose to follow, the weight of my own conflicted feelings momentarily set aside. Holmes, I said quietly, if Miss Hargrave is innocent, as I believe, then our task is to prove it. Holmes paused by the window, looking out into the fog-shrouded Thames. Indeed, Watson. Justice requires the truth, however tangled it may be, and in this game of shadows and mirrors, it is the keen eye that sees beyond the illusion. He turned to me with a rare softness. Rest now, my friend. Tomorrow, the game continues. As the gaslight guttered low, I felt the twin currents of doubt and determination surging within me, ready to face whatever darkness awaited on the morrow. The dawn broke over the Thames, the fog still lingering like a shroud as the Seraphine cut through the sluggish water. Holmes and I stood near the upper deck railing, the morning chill biting but the air sharp with anticipation. Observe, Watson, Holmes murmured, eyes scanning the gathering crowd of passengers. The game is not won through brute force, but through subtle pressure and the careful unraveling of facades. He nodded toward Madame Leclerc, who stood by the casino entrance, commanding her domain with serene authority. Beside her, Lucien Gray engaged several men in animated conversation, his charm as effortless as the flick of a card. Holmes's gaze flickered to a figure moving discreetly through the crowd, the illusionist, ever the shadow. Each a player, Holmes said, each with secrets hidden beneath a mask. Our task is to unsettle them, to watch for cracks. Holmes approached Madame Leclerc first, joining her as she surveyed the casino floor. Madame, he began smoothly, the tension aboard this vessel is palpable. How do you maintain such calm amid these stormy waters? Leclerc smiled, though her eyes held steel. Control is a necessary art, Mr. Holmes. One cannot allow the tempest to dictate one's course. Holmes's eyes narrowed. And yet, storms can reveal the weakest branch. She regarded him coolly. True, but a careful gardener knows which to prune. Holmes's tone shifted slightly, probing. And what of loyalty, madame? To whom does your allegiance truly belong? Leclerc's gaze hardened. To those who preserve order and opportunity. The game we play is one of survival. Holmes inclined his head. Survival often demands sacrifice. I trust you understand this intimately. She smiled again, less warmly. Survival is the currency of this ship, detective, and none pay it more dearly than I. Later, Holmes and I observed Lucian Gray from the shadowed alcove near the card room. Gray's laughter rang out as he shuffled cards with expert dexterity. Holmes's voice was low. Notice his ease, Watson. Confidence can be a shield or a weapon. Holmes stepped forward casually. Mr. Gray, a morning greeting. Your reputation precedes you. Gray's smile was sharp. Holmes, always a pleasure. What brings you to my corner of the world? Holmes's eyes gleamed. Curiosity and a desire to understand. Tell me, how does one maintain such a winning streak? Luck, skill, or something? More? Gray's expression flickered. I prefer to call it insight. Holmes's gaze bore into him. Insight gained through observation. Or manipulation. Gray's smile tightened. You suggest I cheat, detective? Holmes shrugged. I suggest only that appearances are often deceiving. A brief silence followed, heavy with unspoken challenge. As the day waned, Holmes arranged to encounter the illusionist backstage during a rehearsal. The mask performer's movements were fluid, rehearsing a disappearing act with eerie precision. Holmes's voice was quiet but firm. Your craft fascinates me. The ability to vanish, disappear without a trace. The illusionist paused, eyes glinting beneath the mask. Illusion is art, Mr. Holmes. Reality is less forgiving. Holmes studied him closely. Is it not true that the greatest illusions are those we impose upon ourselves? The illusionist inclined his head. Perhaps, or those we choose to believe. Holmes's fingers tapped lightly against the table. Tell me, have you ever considered that an illusionist's greatest trick is to hide something deadly in plain sight? The illusionist's gaze darkened, but his voice remained steady. I am but a performer. The darkness belongs to others. Returning to my quarters, I found Holmes quietly reflective. Watson, he said softly, each of our suspects is a locked box, some with complex tumblers, others with simple latches. Our goal is to find the key that opens them all. I nodded, the weight of the day's observations pressing upon me. Do you believe one of them acts alone? Holmes's eyes gleamed with the thrill of the hunt. In this game, the answer is seldom simple. Alliances shift, motives overlap. The Seraphine itself is a crucible, refining truth through fire. He paused, then smiled faintly. We tread carefully, Watson. The next move belongs to us. The heavy velvet curtains of the private lounge were drawn, muffling the distant clatter of chips and laughter. Holmes and I sat across from Madame Leclerc, the faint scent of jasmine mingling with the smoky air. Madame, Holmes began smoothly, this vessel is more than a mere pleasure cruise. You operate at the nexus of commerce, politics, and shadow. Leclerc's eyes glinted with a mixture of amusement and calculation. You are perceptive, Mr. Holmes. The Seraphine serves many masters, some known, others unseen. I leaned forward. What of Lord Hargrave's papers? It said they contained sensitive information, delicate negotiations that could unsettle entire governments. Leclerc's expression darkened. The documents are a dangerous commodity. In the wrong hands, they could ignite conflict across Europe. Holmes's voice sharpened. And yet, the contents vanished along with Lord Hargrave's life. Is it not curious that none aboard claim knowledge of their whereabouts? She sighed softly. The silence is telling. Many aboard would benefit from their disappearance. Holmes fixed her with a steady gaze. Including yourself? Her smile was thin, almost predatory. I protect my interests as anyone must, but my allegiance remains with the preservation of order. Later, in a shadowed corner of the smoking room, Lucian Gray lounged with the ease of a man accustomed to power. Mr. Gray, Holmes said, sliding into the seat beside him, you move effortlessly between tables and tongues. What secrets have you traded beneath this gilded roof? Gray's eyes sparkled. Secrets are currency, detective. I deal in many forms of wealth, information chief among them. Holmes's voice lowered. I hear whispers you may be more than a gambler. A facilitator for certain foreign interests, perhaps? Gray's smile turned wry. A diplomat in disguise? I prefer observer. But beware, observation can be a double-edged sword. I watched the tension in Gray's posture. Would you say loyalty here is bought or coerced? He shrugged elegantly. A bit of both, depending on the player. The stakes aboard the Seraphine are as high as the stakes at the tables. That evening, Holmes sought out Captain Fenwick in the captain's quarters, a cramped space filled with nautical charts and the scent of brine. "Captain," Holmes began, "you command this vessel with an iron will. Tell me, what is your stake in these proceedings?" Fenwick's eyes were steely. "My duty is to the ship and its safe passage. Politics are distractions I prefer to avoid." Holmes leaned in. "Yet your silence speaks volumes. The captain's loyalty is often the key to unlocking a mystery." Fenwick's jaw tightened. "Loyalty is not given lightly, detective, nor is trust." Holmes nodded slowly. "So you guard secrets as fiercely as the Thames guards its fog." Back in the lounge, I caught a moment alone with Eliza Hargrave. Her eyes were fierce but shadowed by weariness. "Miss Hargrave," I said gently, "these waters are treacherous, not only in politics but in hearts as well." She smiled bitterly. "My father's death has left a void. I seek only justice, though I fear the truth may be darker than I imagined." I hesitated, then asked, "Do you believe someone aboard wished to silence him permanently?" Her gaze hardened. "More than wished. They acted, and their motives run deeper than greed or power. There is a reckoning coming." That night, Holmes and I stood on the deck beneath a tapestry of stars, the river whispering secrets below. "The threads we follow intertwine politics with personal vendettas," Holmes mused. "This is no ordinary murder. It is a gambit in a larger game." I nodded. "And our suspects are not merely players, but pawns and kings alike." Holmes's eyes gleamed with resolve. "Then we must watch carefully, for in such games, the truth is the ultimate prize, and often the most elusive." The gaslights flickered low in the dimly lit lounge reserved for the ship's most clandestine dealings. A select few had gathered, a handful of figures whose presence alone whispered danger and power. The room smelled of cigar smoke and polished wood, heavy with tension. Holmes and I had managed to secure discreet passage to this shadowed conclave, concealed in plain sight among the mingling elite. Our objective: to unearth the true stakes behind Lord Hargrave's murder and the missing documents that threatened to unravel the delicate balance of Europe. Madame Leclerc was already seated at the far end, her posture regal, but her eyes sharp as ever. Beside her, Captain Fenwick leaned against the mantel, arms crossed, his face unreadable beneath the flickering light. Lucian Gray stood near the window, the ever-present glint of a gambler's cunning in his smile. Suddenly, a door creaked open and a new figure slipped inside, a man whose presence sent an electric chill through the room. The illusionist, mask removed, revealed the steely eyes of a man accustomed to secrets. The murmurs ceased. Madame Leclerc rose, voice smooth but authoritative. "Gentlemen and lady," she began, casting a glance towards Eliza Hargrave, who had joined unnoticed. "We convene not merely for pleasure, but to address the peril brought upon us by Lord Hargrave's untimely demise." Holmes, standing quietly near the shadows, allowed the statement to hang in the air before stepping forward. "It is clear the death was no random act, but a calculated strike. The documents he carried, are they here? Or have they passed beyond the Seraphine's decks?" Fenwick's eyes flickered with something close to disdain. "The papers are a threat to all our interests. Their contents could destabilize alliances and provoke war." Lucian Gray smiled thinly. "The more dangerous the secret, the deeper the desire to conceal it." Leclerc's gaze hardened. "And yet, concealment breeds suspicion. We cannot afford fractures among ourselves." Holmes's voice cut through with precision. "The question remains, who benefits most from the removal of Lord Hargrave and from keeping those documents hidden?" The illusionist stepped forward, voice low but resonant. "There is a faction aboard seeking to tip the scales in favor of chaos, who manipulate from the shadows, using deceit as their weapon." Eliza's eyes blazed. "Those who play with nations' fates, as if pieces on a board, but no one is untouchable." The room tensed, the air thick with unspoken threats. Holmes's gaze swept the assembled faces. "This is a house built on shifting alliances. We must discern friend from foe before the game reaches its deadly conclusion." Madame Leclerc's voice was steel. "Then we have much work ahead. The Seraphine is no longer merely a vessel for indulgence. It is the stage upon which the future of Europe is gambled. As the meeting dispersed, Holmes turned to me quietly. The stakes have grown beyond a simple murder, Watson. We face a conspiracy that entwines power, espionage, and the delicate thread of peace itself. I nodded, the weight of the revelation settling deep. And the players are many, and dangerous. Holmes's eyes gleamed with resolve. Then we must prepare. Act 2. The stakes deepen. The fog hung heavy over the Thames that morning, muffling the clatter of the Seraphine's engines and casting a pallid gray over the gilded decks. The passengers moved with a restless energy, their whispered conversations carrying the unmistakable weight of suspicion and fear. Holmes and I met early in our cramped cabin, the room thick with smoke from his ever-present pipe. His eyes gleamed with a mixture of purpose and fatigue. "We have entered the labyrinth, Watson," he said softly, "and the walls close in with every turn." I poured a cup of steaming tea and settled across from him, the silence between us brimming with unspoken concern. "Our meeting last night," I began cautiously. "It revealed much, but also left many questions unanswered. Who do you suspect moves the pieces from the shadows?" Holmes's fingers traced the rim of his cup. "Several are players, some merely pawns. Madame Leclerc's influence is considerable, yet it is tempered by her need for secrecy. Gray, as always, thrives on uncertainty. But it is Fenwick who intrigues me most, a man bound by duty, yet with shadows in his past." I furrowed my brow. "And Eliza Hargrave? Her passion seems genuine. Could she be a wild card in this game?" Holmes nodded thoughtfully. "Emotions cloud judgment, but can also illuminate truth. Your affection for her may yet prove advantageous, or a vulnerability." The thought stirred unease within me, but Holmes's steady gaze left no room for doubt. Later that day, Holmes set his plan in motion. We began by shadowing Madame Leclerc as she moved among her guests, her every gesture precise, her smile a carefully crafted mask. "She carries the weight of many secrets," Holmes remarked, eyes never wavering. "Observe how the others defer to her, yet also glance with wary suspicion. Power here is currency, but so is fear." I watched as she engaged a group of men in hushed conversation near the baccarat tables. Her voice was low but commanding. Suddenly, she turned, catching Holmes's gaze across the room. A flicker of recognition passed between them, a subtle acknowledgement of the game they both played. Our next encounter was with Lucian Gray, found in the smoky haze of the card room. He dealt cards with effortless grace, eyes flicking over the players as if reading their very souls. "Mr. Gray," Holmes greeted him, stepping into the circle of gamblers, "your reputation for winning precedes you." Gray's smile was enigmatic. "And yet, fortune is a fickle companion, Holmes. She favors those who understand her whims." Holmes leaned forward, voice low. "I am curious. How well do you understand the whims of those aboard this vessel? There are forces at play beyond mere chance." Gray's eyes narrowed slightly. "You insinuate conspiracy? A tempting notion. But in games and politics alike, all is negotiation. Negotiation that can tip into betrayal," Holmes said quietly. Gray shrugged. "The line is often thin." Meanwhile, the captain's quarters revealed a different tension. Fenwick, stoic and unreadable, regarded us with a guarded expression. "Captain," Holmes began, "your loyalty is noted. Yet the Seraphine carries more than mere passengers. It ferries secrets and ambitions." Fenwick's jaw clenched. "My duty is to the ship's safety. Politics are beyond my purview." Holmes's gaze sharpened. "And yet, you possess knowledge others seek to hide. I suspect you know more about Lord Hargrave's final hours than you admit." Fenwick's silence was telling. In the quiet of my cabin, my thoughts drifted to Eliza Hargrave. The passion in her eyes, the fierce resolve, it stirred emotions I struggled to contain. When I next spoke with her, our conversation was fraught with tension. "Miss Hargrave," I said gently, "I sense your grief is compounded by something darker." She looked away briefly before meeting my gaze. "Father's death exposed fault lines I never wished to see. There are those who would see our family broken to seize their prize." Her words resonated painfully. "If you are involved, I pray you remain safe, John." Her concern unsettled me, a reminder of the personal stakes intertwined with the case. That evening, Holmes summoned me to the observation deck, the city lights shimmering faintly through the fog. "The game escalates," he said grimly. "We must probe deeper into the alliances here. Each conversation, each glance may conceal treachery." I nodded, feeling the weight of the unraveling conspiracy pressing upon us. "We cannot afford errors," Holmes continued. "Our adversary is cunning, and the fate of nations may hinge on our success." As the Seraphine glided silently into the night, I steeled myself for the dangers yet to come. The lounge was nearly empty, save for the flickering gaslight casting long shadows against the rich mahogany panels. Holmes had invited Madame Leclerc for a private conversation under the pretense of discussing security arrangements, a gambit to unearth her hidden truths. She arrived with her usual composed grace, though I detected a flicker of unease beneath her polished exterior. Holmes motioned to 2 chairs by the fire. "Madam," he began, voice low and deliberate, "we stand at a crossroads. The death of Lord Hargrave and the disappearance of his documents threaten not just individuals, but the delicate balance upon which our continent rests." Leclerc's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing, waiting for him to continue. Holmes leaned forward slightly. "It is said you possess connections that extend beyond the casino's velvet ropes, ties to foreign agents and shadowy networks. I wonder, do you recognize the cost of such alliances?" Her lips curved in a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Detective, in my world, alliances are as necessary as air, yet the cost you imply may be too dear." "Indeed," Holmes replied. "We have heard whispers that the documents in question contain details that could ignite war. Would you say your interests align with peace or with disruption?" Leclerc's gaze sharpened. "My interests lie in stability. A house divided cannot stand, Mr. Holmes. But stability can be a mask for control." Holmes pressed. "Is it true that you pressured Lord Hargrave in the days before his death to alter his stance on the negotiations?" Her posture stiffened, the faintest trace of color rising in her cheek. "Negotiations involve persuasion. I would not deny that I sought to influence him." Holmes's eyes gleamed with quiet triumph. "And yet, influence can breed enemies. Might someone in your circle have taken that too far?" Leclerc's calm cracked for a heartbeat. "You insinuate I bear responsibility for his death." Holmes's tone was gentle but unyielding. "No, but I suggest you hold knowledge that could illuminate the true perpetrator." She hesitated, then sighed. "There are those aboard the Seraphine who play a dangerous game, beyond even my control, men who would use any means to achieve their ends." Holmes inclined his head. "And do you fear what those men might do if they believe you have betrayed them?" Her eyes darkened. "Fear is a companion I know too well. I tread carefully, detective." Holmes sat back, the firelight dancing in his calculating gaze. "Madame Leclerc, your secrets may yet prove the key to this mystery, or the lock that seals it." She met his gaze steadily. "Then I suggest you proceed with caution. The Seraphine's waters run deep, and many are willing to drown to keep their secrets safe." As she rose to leave, Holmes turned to me quietly. "Watson, the game is no longer one of chance, but of calculated moves. Madame Leclerc's hesitation betrays both knowledge and fear. We must unravel whom she fears most." I nodded, the tension between truth and deception tightening like a noose around us all. The dim glow of the lounge had faded behind us as Holmes and I stepped onto the observation deck, the fog swirling thickly around the iron railings. The Thames whispered beneath the hull, concealing secrets in its murky depths. Holmes exhaled slowly, eyes sharp with focus. "Madame Leclerc's confession, though carefully veiled, confirms what we suspected. The currents beneath this vessel run perilously deep." I leaned closer. "She fears certain men aboard. But who? And what is her leverage?" Holmes's gaze swept the shadowed deck, his mind evidently racing through possibilities. "We must identify those who wield power covertly, those who would silence a woman of her standing to protect their own agendas." He paused, the familiar flicker of excitement returning. "There is one man whose presence you may have overlooked, Watson, one who thrives in the spaces between light and shadow." I frowned. "Who do you mean?" "The illusionist." The name hung heavily between us. The mysterious performer whose vanishing acts were no mere entertainment, but possibly concealment of darker deeds. Holmes continued, voice low. "His talents for sleight of hand and deception are unmatched. He is the perfect agent for planting false leads, for manipulating perception." I recalled the chilling precision with which the murder had been staged. A locked room death, a cryptic playing card smeared with a red fingerprint placed deliberately on the corpse. The artistry had all the hallmarks of misdirection. Holmes tapped his chin thoughtfully. We must observe him closely. A confrontation in the public eye could unmask his true role. That evening, we attended the Cabaret Lounge, a swirl of gaslight, velvet, and the faint strains of piano music. The crowd was thick with gamblers and aristocrats, laughter masking the undercurrents of suspicion. The illusionist appeared on stage, a figure cloaked in black, his mask concealing all but a flash of his intense eyes. His performance dazzled with vanishings and transformations, the audience entranced. Holmes watched with keen interest, whispering to me, "Notice the subtle glances to the balconies. Signals, perhaps, to unseen confederates." Midway through the act, the illusionist produced a single playing card from thin air, the ace of spades, smeared faintly with red. A hush fell. The audience exchanged uneasy looks. Holmes's voice was barely audible. A message, the very card left on Lord Hargrave. I felt a cold ripple run through me. After the act, Holmes and I trailed the illusionist as he slipped through the corridors toward a hidden stairwell. We followed at a cautious distance, our footsteps muffled by thick carpets. He paused in a narrow alcove and pulled back his mask, revealing the sharp features of a man in his mid-30s, eyes dark and calculating. Holmes stepped forward, voice calm but commanding. "Mr. Illusionist, or should I say, the architect of misdirection, we must speak." The man smiled thinly. "Mr. Holmes, to what do I owe the pleasure?" Holmes's gaze was piercing. "You wield deception as a weapon. I suspect you know far more about Lord Hargrave's death and the missing documents than you admit." The illusionist's smile faded. "And what proof do you possess of such bold claims?" Holmes produced a folded note from his coat pocket, the paper bearing a barely visible watermark, an emblem known to be used by foreign intelligence services. This was found hidden in the cabin of a deceased passenger, one whose name has been conveniently forgotten, Holmes said. The man's eyes flickered, just for a moment. "A dangerous game, detective," he muttered. "But I assure you, I am but an entertainer." Holmes's voice sharpened. Then why leave the ace of spades with the red fingerprint? A calling card or a taunt? The illusionist's lips pressed thin. Perhaps both. As the man slipped away into the foggy night, Holmes turned to me. "The illusion is unraveling, Watson, but we tread a perilous path. Our enemy is clever and always one step ahead." I nodded grimly, feeling the weight of the truth pressing down. The game has truly begun. The soft creak of the ship settling beneath us was the only sound as I retreated to my cabin, the night's events weighing heavily upon my mind. The fog outside pressed against the porthole like a shroud, concealing secrets I feared I was not yet ready to confront. Eliza Hargrave's face haunted me, the fierce determination in her eyes, the quiet vulnerability she masked behind her suffragette resolve. I found myself drawn to her in a way I had not anticipated, a connection that tangled with my duties and my reason. As I sat by the dim lantern light, I forced my thoughts into order. The case had already consumed so much: political machinations, espionage, murder, and now my own heart threatened to become an unwelcome accomplice. I heard a soft knock, and the door creaked open. It was Eliza, her expression hesitant, almost fragile. "John," she said softly, stepping inside. I did not mean to intrude, but I needed someone to talk to, someone I could trust. I gestured to the chair beside me. "Please, sit." She lowered herself carefully, the tension in her frame palpable. "I feel as if I am caught between worlds," she began. "My father's death tore apart more than our family. It shattered the world I thought I knew. And now the suspicion and danger surrounding the Seraphine make every moment uncertain." Her hands clenched in her lap. "I fear for my future, for the future of the cause I fight for. Yet I cannot turn away." I reached out, placing a steadying hand over hers. "Eliza, you are stronger than you realize, but you must also protect yourself." She looked up, her eyes searching mine. "I worry that my presence here endangers those I care about, including you." Her words struck a chord deep within me. I realized then how much my feelings had intertwined with this case, how blurred the lines between professional duty and personal desire had become. "I care for you," I admitted quietly, "but I must remain vigilant, for both our sakes." She nodded, a faint smile breaking through her worry. "Then promise me, John, you will be careful." I squeezed her hand gently. "I promise." Later, as I lay awake, the weight of my emotions pressed upon me like the fog outside. Holmes's words echoed in my mind. how my affection might be a vulnerability, a chink in our armor. I knew I had to guard my heart, lest it cloud my judgment and imperil the delicate balance of justice we sought aboard this cursed vessel. The game aboard the Seraphine was far from over, and I feared that in matters of both intrigue and the heart, the stakes were perilously high. The following morning, the heavy fog still lingered over the Thames, casting a muted gray light through the cabin window. I sat at my writing desk, the blank page before me mirroring the turmoil in my mind. Eliza's visit the night before had unsettled my usual composure. The lines between friend and client, between duty and affection, blurred dangerously. Holmes entered without announcement, his sharp eyes immediately taking in my distracted state. "Watson," he said, voice edged with concern, "you appear far less engaged with the facts than usual. The case demands our full attention." I looked up, forcing a steady smile. "Forgive me, Holmes. Matters beyond the investigation weigh heavily." He nodded knowingly, but did not press, as if aware that some battles could not be fought on logic alone. Holmes then unfurled his latest deductions. "I have arranged for discreet surveillance of the illusionist during tonight's performance. If our suspicions hold, he will reveal more than mere sleight of hand." I felt a pang of admiration for Holmes's relentless focus, his ability to remain unmoved by the personal storms that threatened to engulf me. As the day wore on, I attempted to steady my mind, alternating between reviewing notes and steeling myself against the gnawing worry for Eliza's safety. Every time the ship rocked gently beneath my feet, it seemed a reminder of the precarious balance we all teetered upon. That evening, the cabaret was alive with murmurs and anticipation. The crowd's restless energy mingled with the smoke and scent of expensive perfumes. Holmes and I took seats near the stage, eyes scanning the audience and performers alike. The illusionist appeared, the mask concealing his features as always. His act commenced with dazzling flair, but beneath the spectacle, Holmes whispered, "Watch closely. The true performance lies in the pauses, the subtle glances, the whispered signals." Midway through, the illusionist produced not just one, but a series of playing cards, each marked with cryptic symbols. The audience's murmurs grew louder. Many recognized the signs as those used by various intelligence groups. Holmes's gaze never wavered. He is daring us to follow his trail. Suddenly, a commotion near the balcony drew our attention. A figure slipped into the shadows, a man whose face was unfamiliar but whose manner suggested purpose. Holmes's eyes narrowed. An accomplice. Without hesitation, Holmes rose, signaling to me to follow. We moved swiftly but carefully through the crowd, the music and applause masking our footsteps. Behind a velvet curtain, Holmes confronted the stranger. "You are far from home, sir," Holmes said quietly. "What role do you play in this deadly game?" The man's eyes flickered with recognition. "Detective Holmes," he replied smoothly. "It seems old acquaintances are harder to escape than I imagined." The words hung heavy in the air, an unexpected connection that promised to unravel more than we anticipated. Later, back in the quiet of our cabin, Holmes paced thoughtfully. "This man," Holmes mused, "is no ordinary player. He has ties to a case I once pursued, a shadow that has now stepped onto the stage of the Seraphine." I looked at Holmes, the weight of the revelation settling between us. "And what does this mean for us?" Holmes stopped, eyes piercing mine. "It means the final act approaches, Watson, and we must be ready to see through every illusion, every deception, to reveal the truth beneath." The corridors of the Seraphine were narrow, lined with heavy crimson drapes and gilded fixtures, the air thick with cigar smoke and whispered secrets. Holmes moved swiftly but silently, his keen eyes searching for any sign of their quarry. I followed closely, my heart pounding, not just from the chase, but from the knowledge that this was no ordinary foe. Holmes halted suddenly, gesturing toward a shadowed alcove near the stern. "Here! He cannot have gone far." We pressed forward cautiously. From the dimness emerged a figure, dressed sharply in dark attire, his face partially obscured beneath a low-brimmed hat. "So predictable, Holmes," the man said with a sardonic smile. "And yet, you never cease to surprise me." Holmes's eyes flashed. "It has been some years since our last encounter, Mr. Delacroix. Tell me, what brings you to the Seraphine, and how deeply are you entwined in Lord Hargrave's demise?" Delacroix's smile twisted. "Entwined? Perhaps, but it's hardly the time for old acquaintances to reminisce." He stepped closer, voice lowering. I came here on a mission, one that transcends petty politics and personal vendettas. The documents Hargrave carried, worth more than their weight in gold, are the key, and I intend to see they don't fall into the wrong hands. Holmes's gaze hardened. And the murder? Was it a necessary casualty? Delacroix shrugged with practiced indifference. Collateral damage in a much larger game. I swallowed hard, feeling the cold edge of reality sharpen. This man was no mere gambler or spy. He was a ghost from Holmes's past, a specter of cunning and ruthlessness. Holmes stepped forward, voice low but fierce. You underestimate me, Delacroix. I have come prepared for every move. Delacroix chuckled softly. Then let us see if you can match wits with the past, detective. Before either of us could react, a sudden noise echoed down the corridor, a hurried footstep, a whispered curse. A figure darted past us and vanished into the maze of cabins. Holmes cursed under his breath. The game intensifies, Watson. We must not lose him. I nodded, heart racing. But why reveal yourself now? What is your endgame? Delacroix's eyes gleamed coldly. To remind you that in this world, nothing is as it seems, not even those closest to you. He turned abruptly, vanishing into the shadows. Holmes and I exchanged a tense glance, understanding the depths of the peril before us. Back in our quarters, Holmes sank into his chair, fingers steepled thoughtfully. Delacroix's return complicates matters. His involvement ties the murder to a web of espionage far wider than we imagined. I paced the room, unsettled. And the documents? What secrets do they hold that would justify such bloodshed? Holmes's eyes burned with intensity. Secrets capable of toppling governments, Watson, the very foundations of Europe's fragile peace. He looked up sharply. We must move swiftly. Tonight, I intend to draw Delacroix out to force his hand. I swallowed my doubts, steeling myself. And if he refuses to play? Holmes's smile was thin and unyielding. Then we must be prepared to expose the final illusion, no matter the cost. The muted light of the late afternoon filtered through the stained glass windows of the Seraphine's main salon, casting fractured rainbows upon the polished mahogany tables and velvet drapes. The usual murmur of conversation and clinking glasses was subdued, the atmosphere thick with apprehension. Holmes stood near the large, ornate fireplace, eyes sharp as he laid out his plan with deliberate precision. Watson, the key to apprehending Delacroix lies in his own arrogance and his need to control the narrative, Holmes began, fingers tracing the edge of a playing card resting on the mantel, a queen of hearts. He will not resist a challenge, especially one that threatens to expose him. I leaned forward, eager to absorb every detail. And the trap? Holmes smiled faintly, a glint of mischief in his eyes. We will stage a private auction in the gambling salon tonight. A rare artifact ostensibly linked to the missing documents will be offered to a select few, among them, Delacroix. He paused, folding his hands. The object is a carefully fabricated decoy, but to Delacroix it will appear genuine. Our leak will be subtle but convincing. He will attempt to seize it, revealing his presence and intentions. I frowned slightly. And what if he suspects a setup? Holmes's gaze was unwavering. His pride will blind him. That the illusion of control is his weakness. As dusk settled, the gambling salon transformed. Crystal chandeliers glittered overhead, casting kaleidoscopic light upon the green felt tables and polished wood. The scent of cigars mingled with the faint aroma of expensive perfume. A small circle of distinguished guests gathered, including Madame Leclerc, Captain Fenwick, Lucien Gray, and of course Delacroix himself, his dark eyes flickering with suspicion as he surveyed the room. Holmes and I stood at the edge, watching keenly. The auctioneer, a smooth-talking man with a silver tongue, presented the artifact, a leather-bound ledger purportedly containing coded references to the missing documents. The room's attention sharpened. Delacroix's fingers twitched imperceptibly. Holmes whispered, "Observe how he calculates, weighs every move." The bidding began. Calm at first, then escalating as Delacroix entered the fray, his offers measured yet increasingly bold. Suddenly, a commotion near the back. A shadow darted between the guests, reaching for the ledger. Holmes moved swiftly, intercepting the figure, a young woman cloaked in black. Madame Leclerc? Holmes's voice was sharp. She smiled coyly. "I am but a player in a larger game, Mr. Holmes." Before Holmes could respond, Delacroix lunged toward the ledger, knocking over a table in his haste. The room erupted into chaos. Holmes and I closed in, right cornering Delacroix against a heavy velvet curtain. "Your pride has betrayed you, Delacroix," Holmes said coldly. "The game is over." Delacroix's smile was a mask of defiance. Perhaps. But the cards are not all revealed. Holmes's eyes glittered. "That, sir, remains to be seen." Later, in the solitude of our quarters, Holmes examined Delacroix's reaction with meticulous care. "Notice, Watson, how he resisted the trap until forced into desperation. His reluctance suggests others still maneuver behind the scenes." I nodded. "So we have not yet uncovered the full conspiracy?" Holmes shook his head slowly. "No, but we have taken a decisive step forward. Delacroix will unravel soon." I sighed, the weight of the case pressing down. "And Eliza? Where does she fit in this deadly tableau?" Holmes regarded me thoughtfully. "She walks a fine line, but her courage is genuine. We must protect her as much as we seek justice." I met his gaze, the unspoken resolve between us clear. "The night is far from over, Holmes." He smiled faintly. "Indeed, Watson, and the final hand has yet to be played." The night deepened over the Thames, the fog curling like restless spirits around the steamer's ornate railings. The Seraphine seemed to hold its breath, a silent witness to the unfolding drama within. Holmes and I returned to the grand dining hall, where the atmosphere was taut with whispered speculations. The guests, while outwardly composed, bore the invisible marks of suspicion and unease. The audacity of Delacroix's attempt to seize the ledger had rippled through the social tapestry like a stone cast into still water. Holmes's eyes scanned the room with clinical precision. "Observe, Watson. Fear is a subtle but potent ally in unraveling deception." As if summoned by his words, Madame Leclerc approached, her usual poise tempered by a flicker of unease. "Mr. Holmes," she said smoothly, voice low enough to avoid prying ears, "you tread dangerous waters. Delacroix is but a pawn in a larger game." Holmes's gaze sharpened. "Indeed, and I intend to uncover the players controlling the board." She regarded him coolly, a faint smile playing at her lips. "Then perhaps you would be wise to consider alliances, not just enemies." Before Holmes could reply, Captain Fenwick appeared, his expression grim. "The steamer's schedules have been disrupted. Communications are strained. There are whispers of sabotage." Holmes's brow furrowed. "Sabotage?" The stakes grow higher. I caught Eliza's eye across the room, her face pale but resolute. She approached, voice steady despite the tremor I sensed beneath. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson," she began, "I fear my presence here has endangered more than myself. The suffragette cause may be a target, but so too is the truth." Holmes nodded thoughtfully. "Your bravery is noted, Miss Hargrave. We will protect both." As the guests dispersed into smaller clusters, murmurs of political betrayal and espionage filled the air. The missing documents loomed larger than ever, a prize coveted not only for their content but for the power they represented. Holmes turned to me quietly. "We must prepare for the final confrontation. Delacroix will not act alone, and his desperation will drive him to risk everything." I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the impending storm. "Holmes, do you believe we can stop this before more lives are lost?" His eyes gleamed with unwavering resolve. "We must, for justice and for the fragile peace that hangs in the balance." The night stretched before us, dark, uncertain, and fraught with peril. As the Seraphine sailed on through the mist, the stage was set for the reckoning to come. The fog thickened as the Seraphine glided silently down the Thames, the world beyond reduced to shadow and whisper. Within the vessel's opulent walls, tension coiled like a serpent ready to strike. Holmes and I gathered in the dimly lit smoking lounge, the atmosphere heavy with expectation. The guests had been discreetly warned to remain in their quarters as the ship's captain, Fenwick, enforced a temporary lockdown. Holmes paced slowly, eyes alight with a fierce clarity. Delacroix is cornered, yet dangerous. His desperation will manifest in cunning and violence. I nodded, fingers tightening around my walking stick. "And the others? Madame Leclerc, Lucien Gray, even Eliza. How do they factor into this?" Holmes halted, fixing me with a sharp gaze. "Each is a piece on this chessboard. Some pawns, others queens in disguise. Our task is to discern which is which." A sudden knock interrupted us. The door creaked open to reveal Captain Fenwick, face stern. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson," he said gravely, "there's been a disturbance near the engine room." We exchanged a glance and followed swiftly. The corridor to the engine room was deserted save for the flickering gas lamps casting long shadows. As we approached, the muffled sound of voices became audible. Holmes motioned for silence and edged closer. Through a narrow opening, we glimpsed Delacroix confronting Lucien Gray, the gambler's usual composure shattered. "You're a fool if you think you control this," Delacroix hissed, eyes blazing. "The documents are mine. Everything depends on them." Gray's smile was cold. "I control only my fate, and tonight, I choose survival." Holmes stepped forward, voice ringing clear. "Enough, gentlemen." Delacroix spun, startled. "Holmes, still playing the hero, I see." Holmes's expression was unyielding. "The game is over, Delacroix. Surrender the documents." Delacroix snarled and lunged, but Fenwick and I closed in. A brief struggle ensued before he was subdued and restrained. Back in the Grand Salon, with Delacroix under guard, Holmes laid bare the truth. Delacroix is a double agent, manipulating factions aboard this vessel for his own gain. The ledger was a decoy. His true aim was to seize the original documents and destabilize political alliances. He turned to Madame Leclerc. "Your cooperation was vital, Madame. Your intelligence network helped us identify Delacroix's movements." She inclined her head gracefully. "I serve England's interests, Mr. Holmes." Holmes's gaze softened slightly as it met Eliza's. "Miss Hargrave, your courage and insight were indispensable. Your cause and your resolve illuminate a path through this darkness." Eliza nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. Later, in the quiet of our cabin, I found Holmes seated by the window, gazing out at the now calm river. "The illusion has been shattered, Holmes," I murmured. He smiled faintly. "Yes, Watson, but in the shadows of deception, new mysteries always linger." I sighed, feeling the weight of recent events settle upon me. "And what of loyalty and trust? Of those who wear masks?" Holmes's eyes met mine, steady and penetrating. "In the end, it is our choice whom we trust and how far we are willing to go in pursuit of truth." The Thames flowed silently beneath us, carrying the secrets of the night away into the dawn. Epilogue. Reflections by Dr. John Watson. As the first pale light of dawn crept over the Thames, casting a silvery sheen upon the water, I found myself seated beside my friend in the familiar quietude of our Baker Street rooms. Holmes was contemplative, his piercing gaze fixed not on the window, but on the intangible threads of the case we had just laid to rest. "The game aboard the Seraphine was a masterclass in illusion and duplicity," Holmes mused, fingers lightly tapping the armrest. "A reminder that truth often lurks beneath layers of deception, veiled by the masks we wear and the shadows we choose to inhabit." I nodded, recalling the tangled web of suspects, each cloaked in their own ambitions and secrets. "It strikes me, Holmes, how fragile the line between loyalty and betrayal can be, how even those closest to us may harbor dark designs." Holmes smiled faintly, the ghost of a rueful expression. "Indeed, Watson, it is a dance as old as mankind itself, the interplay of trust and suspicion. Yet in every such dance, the truth, like the ace concealed in a deck, eventually reveals itself to the observant eye." I glanced at him, the burden of recent events heavy upon my heart. And what of those caught between duty and desire? Eliza Hargrave's courage was remarkable, yet I fear her path remains perilous. Holmes's gaze softened. "The brave often walk in the twilight, where the world's judgment is neither swift nor certain, but it is in that liminal space that change begins." There was a long silence, broken only by the distant clatter of London awakening. I thought then of the games of chance, the political gambits, and the human frailties laid bare amidst the opulence and intrigue of that floating palace. Holmes finally spoke, voice low and steady. "Our world is a stage of endless wagers, Watson. Some stake their fortunes, others their very lives, and we, ever watchful, must be prepared to call their bluffs and expose the hidden hands." I raised my glass in a quiet toast, to the game and to the never-ending pursuit of justice. Holmes's eyes twinkled, to the game. And with that, the fog lifted from the Thames, revealing a city poised once more between darkness and dawn, its secrets momentarily unveiled, yet forever beckoning the next great adventure. Thank you so much for listening to our Honoring Audiobooks original Sherlock Holmes adventure. We hope you enjoyed the story. Don't forget to leave a comment letting us know which story you'd like to hear next and where you're tuning in from. We love hearing from our detective fans around the world. See you in the next adventure.